You've seen the attack ads.
1. Drew Edmondson's a liberal, unethical, Hillary-loving career politician.
From both sides.
He'd protect the same corporate interests as Mary Fallon, not you.
And the promises from the candidates.
From now on, we're going to properly fund education.
But how are they going to do it?
We are going to end politics as usual.
The candidates are here tonight with their answers, from healthcare to education.
We think it's going to be a close race.
I think Oklahoma voters are going to focus on Oklahoma issues.
KOCO partnering with KJRH in Tulsa and KSWO in Lawton, bringing you the only statewide gubernatorial debate. This is Commitment 2018.
Good evening. I'm KOCO's Jessica Shambach. Thank you for joining us for this special political event being broadcast across Oklahoma tonight, here in the Oklahoma City area and on our partner stations in Lawton and in Tulsa. We have our panel of political experts this evening who will be posing questions to the candidates tonight. We have Monty Brown from KSWO, KOCO's Abigail Ogle and Brett Begansky, and also Scott Thompson from KJRH. I also want to introduce our gubernatorial candidates this evening, Democrat Drew Edmondson and Republican Kevin Stitt. Gentlemen, welcome. Thank you for being here tonight.
It's good to be here.
Now, prior to tonight's debate, a coin flip determined the order of opening and closing statements. Kevin Stitt won that and elected to take the second opening statement. Drew Edmondson will make the second closing statement. A second coin flip determined which candidate will receive the first question in the first half of this debate, and Kevin Stitt also got that. We also have the rules. Candidate 1 will be asked a question and have 1 minute to respond. Then candidate 2 will also have 1 minute to respond, and candidate 1 will get a 30-second rebuttal. After that, the order will then flip. So let's begin, shall we? First off, Drew Edmondson, you have 2 minutes for your opening statement.
Thank you, Jessica, and it's good to be here. And I want to thank Channel 5 in Oklahoma City, Channel 8 in Tulsa, and Channel 7 in Lawton for simulcasting this debate here tonight. It's going to be an opportunity for us to kind of get aside from the clutter that's on TV with all of the negative ads and actually get into the substance of why this governor's race is important. We're going to talk about education. We're going to talk about why we rank down at the bottom in terms of per capita expenditures on our students. We're going to talk about health care and why national statistics now say that Oklahoma's life expectancy has been downgraded because of our health outcomes in this state. We're going to talk about overcrowded prisons, and we're going to talk about mental health and how we can approach the real problem of reducing prison population by taking care of the drug, alcohol, and mental health needs of our citizens. And I hope we also get to talk about the medical problems and Medicaid expansion and how we can provide a basic level of medical care for our population. All of these are important issues, and all of them are kind of crowded out by the noise in the negative ads. So we may get to talk about those a little bit too. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. Again, I thank the stations for making this time available to us, and I'm looking forward to the questions coming up.
Mr. Edmondson, thank you. Mr. Stitt, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. You know, I want to start and thank my wife, Sarah. She's a great mother and partner. You know, we built Gateway together. It's a homegrown success story. We now employ 1,200 people. We have offices in 41 states. I couldn't do it without my wife, Sarah. You know, I also want to take a chance to thank my children as well. We've got 6 kids from 18 down to 4. And here's my chance to embarrass them. I love you guys. Now get ready for bed. You know, the truth is my kids are a big reason that I'm running for governor. I didn't know anything about politics, didn't know any politicians, but I got so tired of seeing my state, the state that I love, struggle, being at the top of all the lists we shouldn't be, like incarceration rates, and being at the bottom of all the lists we shouldn't be, like job growth and education. And I just don't think that you know, I've watched my state struggle also from crisis to crisis, $1 billion budget deficit, 4-day school weeks, scandal after scandal. But just it seemed like the career politicians, their only answer was new taxes on you and your family. I think we can change that. With the right leadership, Oklahoma can be a top 10 state. You know, as your next governor, I'm going to put us on a path to be top 10. Top 10 in job growth, top 10 in education, top 10 in infrastructure, healthcare, and government efficiencies. I just don't think that the career politicians who got us in this mess will do anything different and can't get us out of it. My opponent has been in state government for 44 years. He just can't deliver the change that we need. And my promise to you, as your next governor, I'll always focus on making the hard decision that's right for the next generation and not the next election. So I look forward to visiting with you tonight and talking about how we can make Oklahoma a great place to live, work, worship, and raise a family.
Mr. Stitt, thank you. Those were the opening statements. Let's get to the questions now. And for the candidates and also for our viewers across Oklahoma, our panelists have grouped their questions into categories. We have those categories for you: education, health, marijuana, economy, criminal justice, and politics, as well as those attack ads. Now, question one comes from KOCO anchor Abigail Ogle, and we will start with education. Abby.
Good evening. Want to go back to April, the statewide teacher walkout making national headlines where teachers vowed to remember in November. Mr. Stitt, you opposed the bill that ended the walkout. Mr. Edmondson, you supported it, but you both acknowledged that Oklahoma needs to do more to fund education, not just the teacher pay raise, but education needs in general. Now is really your chance to convince anyone who's concerned about education to vote for you. What would you say to teachers, students, and parents?
You know, education is going to be the top in my administration. In a state administration, we're going to be focused on being top 10 in education. So I think we have to pay teachers what market is. You know, it's a business principle. You have to pay teachers what they do in the states around us: Texas, Kansas, Arkansas, Colorado. So I want all the teachers to know that my focus is in my education plan to get them to #1 in the region. It's a small lift. The legislature actually got them to #2 in the region in teacher pay. I think that's going to go a long way to show our teachers in that profession that they're respected and they're appreciated. And then I want to focus on really the outcomes. We've got to focus on getting our kids ready for the workforce. And that's why I'm running for governor, folks. We have to look at not only Common Ed, but also career techs and higher ed, get those folks working together, because the jobs of tomorrow are different than the jobs of yesterday. And I want to get our kids ready for that workforce.
Mr. Edmondson, what do you have to say to educators and parents?
Well, when the teachers announced that if the legislature didn't meet their goal of funding education by April 1, that they would walk on the Capitol, I announced that if they walked, I would walk with them, and I did. And I'm proud that I stood with the teachers when they were talking to the legislatures about the needs of state government. The legislature stepped up. They passed a $400 million plus revenue package and a $6,000 pay raise for teachers, which is a great start. But if they thought this was just about teacher pay, they weren't listening to what the teachers say. In a 7-state region that we are in here in Oklahoma, we rank 7th in per capita expenditures on our students. And after the teacher pay raise, we still rank 7th in per capita expenditures on our students. We have to do better. It's going to take more.
Would you like a rebuttal?
You know, the thing that I like to remind Oklahomans is, you know, we had a teacher walkout in 1968, 1979, and also in 1990. Those were all Democratic-controlled years. I'm proud of the Republican legislature who actually got our teachers the pay raise that they need. But folks, we have to fund education, and look, there's 49 other states that give us great examples of how to do it. This is going to take an outsider, a fresh approach, a business approach to get the dollars that we need into our classrooms, and I'll do that as your next governor.
Let's go now to Brett Begansky.
Talking about pay and money for the classroom, where specifically is that money going to come from in order to improve education in our state?
Mr. Edmondson.
Well, what I've recommended since last year when I first announced is that we go to 3 areas, none of which raise taxes on most Oklahoma families. One is to put the gross production tax back at 7% where it used to be. We lowered it in order to incentivize horizontal drilling. It worked. They no longer need the incentive. Number 2 is to do away with the capital gains loophole for millionaires. It was also an experiment. It never worked. We have lost $474 million over a 5-year period because of that loophole, and 70% of that went to people earning over $1 million a year. That one needs to go also. And the third is the other 50 cents on a pack of cigarettes. Those three things would bring in $300 million additional dollars, the same amount that was recommended by Step Up Oklahoma when they said we needed $700 million, and we passed $400 million, which Mr. Stitt said he would have vetoed.
You have 1 minute.
Yeah, this is a big difference between my opponent and me. You know, his solution is always more taxes on hardworking Oklahomans. I don't even know why we're talking about new taxes. We raised $500 million in taxes last year. We have $500 million more in revenue coming in because the economy is booming. Folks, I'm not for any new taxes until we fix the structural problems. My opponent talks about $300 million. I want Oklahomans to know $300 million is 1.5% efficiencies in a $20 billion budget. Folks, I'm about results. I'm not about new taxes. And we have to have an outsider, a fresh set of eyes on these problems, or it's going to be more of the same if we keep electing the same career politicians who got us in this mess. Folks, I'm ready to lead. I have innovative ideas to get us to the next level.
You have a 30-second rebuttal if you'd like it.
Thank you. I would, as a matter of fact, because this is not a big difference between the candidates. This is a huge difference between the candidates. Mr. Stitt believes that he can give teachers more pay raises, do more for education, do more for health, bring down prison population without any new revenues. He is dreaming. The money is not there unless we make sure it's there. I have a plan to do that does not raise taxes on ordinary Oklahomans, just those hard-working millionaires.
We want to stay on the topic of education, and let's head to our panelists with Monty.
The dean of the UCO College of Education and Professional Studies recently released a report stating that the state could save $27 million by consolidating school districts. Have you read the report, and what is your position on consolidation?
Mr. Stitt?
I have not read that report, but you know, consolidation is a local county decision. So I think we have to tweak our funding formula. Folks, we have the same issues that every other state does. So that's what I'm so frustrated about, is why our outcomes are 45th in education. We can do so much better. But when you look at our funding formula, we punish local districts that want to do more. I graduated from Norman High School. And if Norman High School raises $1 locally, they don't get to keep that dollar. They get subtracted from the state equalization formula. So there's no incentive for any district to pay their teachers more, to invest in technology, to have smaller class sizes. Folks, we've got to look at how other states are funding education and stop doing the same things that we did in 1968, 1979, or 1990, or we're going to get the exact same results.
You have 1 minute.
The decision on whether or not to consolidate schools is fundamentally a decision to be made by local school boards. I don't think we have any disagreement on that. We have to trust that local school boards are going to do what they feel is in the best interest of the students in that school district, and that parents will support board members who are acting in the best interest of the students in those districts. That does not mean we cannot have administrative savings in the provision of education across the state of Oklahoma. We can do that. We can make changes. We can encourage and incentivize consolidation of districts without forcing it out of Oklahoma City. I'm prepared to do that. We can take messages to local school boards on how they can save money, how they can save administrative costs, and we need to be about the business of doing that.
Mr. Stitt?
Yeah, I want to address something earlier that my opponent said. You know, his $300 million proposal by taxing the oil and gas industry and the other folks, it's really fuzzy math, because he promises that not only to education, but health care and roads and bridges. So $1 billion worth of promises for $300 million in new tax increases. Folks, we can find it in efficiencies. It's only 1.5% efficiencies. We have to start talking about results instead of new taxes. That's the solution that every politician always brings up. I'm different.
Okay, let's move on to our next question with Scott.
Thanks, Jessica. Gentlemen, Oklahoma has some of the worst health outcomes in the nation. We consistently rank at the top for obesity-related illnesses like heart disease, cancer, stroke, and diabetes, and for related issues like depression and suicide. Would you expand Medicaid through the Affordable Care Act so more Oklahoma families could access health care?
Mr. Edmondson?
Short answer is yes, I would. We've got 153,000 Oklahomans who work full-time, earn too much to qualify for Medicaid, and don't earn enough to be able to opt into the insurance pool and afford private health insurance. They would benefit from an expansion of Medicaid. And these are our tax dollars. We're sending it to Washington. They're being spent in other states to provide for the medical needs of people in Michigan and Minnesota and California and Pennsylvania. I want to bring those tax dollars home and take care of the medical needs of people who would qualify under the Medicaid expansion. And incidentally, while we're doing that, we're going to take a great step forward in keeping hospitals open. And it's not going to keep every hospital open, and it's not the solution in all instances. But hospitals that are on a thin margin, if we start compensating for currently uncompensated care, we're going to keep some of those hospitals open, and I think that's a good thing for rural Oklahoma.
Mr. Stitt?
You know, as I've traveled to all 77 counties meeting with our great Oklahomans, that's a huge concern, is our rural hospitals. How are we getting those dollars to our rural hospitals, to our nursing homes? This is a state agency called Medicaid. It's the Healthcare Authority Board that runs Medicaid. It is a $5.5 billion agency. Folks, it's grown from $3 billion to $5.5 billion. Nobody is accountable. So one of the main things we have to do is make sure those dollars are getting into our rural hospitals and into our nursing homes. So Medicaid expansion is just a Band-Aid on these problems. I believe in a trampoline and a system that helps people get off a system and not a hammock. We can't create a system that keeps people on a system and dependency. We need to get them back into the workforce, back into working and into jobs.
Would you like a response?
Well, yes. I'm very curious on what that trampoline's going to look like, because we haven't heard yet. And if we're going to be funding trampolines, that's a bit of an extravagant expense for state government, and I think that's one of the places we can cut waste. I believe people need help, hospitals need help, and expanding Medicaid is a good step forward in accomplishing that.
Okay, let's stay on the topic of health care with Abby now.
On the similar token here, the only hospital in Pauls Valley recently shut its doors, and as we've mentioned, many of Oklahoma's rural hospitals, unfortunately, are in danger of suffering the same fate. What specifically will you do to ensure that all Oklahomans will have access to quality health care within a reasonable driving distance from their homes?
Mr. Stitt?
Yeah, you know, we have got to, this is a national problem. There's healthcare systems, rural hospitals all over the nation that are struggling. And when you think about delivering services and how do you get those dollars into our hospitals, you know, right now our reimbursement rates are less than the states around us. For example, you know, I'm in the mortgage business, and so we've got, if interest rates today are, let's say, 5%, we've got to create a 5% interest rate. If we have, we would never create all the management, the infrastructure, and then whatever's left over, we deliver 6% interest rates. That's what our government does. They build infrastructure, management teams, all the expense, and whatever's left over are reimbursements for our hospitals and our nursing homes. It is a bottom-up approach, folks. That is a business approach. We have to start with how we're delivering those dollars to our hospitals and our nursing homes. Then we build the management after that. This is a management problem. It's a structural problem that I'll fix as governor.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Edmondson?
Well, we're doing some good work with federally qualified health care centers that are picking up part of the load, particularly in low-income areas of the state, and they're doing a pretty good job on it. In the short term, I do think it's imperative that we opt into the Medicaid expansion to try to keep hospitals, particularly in rural areas, open as long as we can. Eventually, I think we're going to move to an area where in remote areas of the state of Oklahoma, we convert full-service hospitals to kind of triage emergency facilities where they stabilize a condition for transport to a hospital with more services at a further distance away. It's probably going to be impossible in the long run to have full-service hospitals in every small town in Oklahoma, but there are creative solutions that I'm prepared to work on to make sure our citizens have the health care needs met.
You have 30 seconds if you'd like.
Sure. You know, I talked to the CEO of the Pauls Valley Hospital, and he said very plainly, the Medicaid expansion would not have saved our hospital. This was a management problem, folks. You know, the real solutions, it's a Band-Aid to take more federal dollars that have the mandates and the handcuffs on it. We need to look at more doctors to our rural communities. We need to look at maybe doctor-owned hospitals, letting them buy in. We've got to look at other revenue sources for our rural hospitals and really strategically place them throughout the state, make sure that we have the access for every single Oklahoman.
We have several topics we want to cover this evening. So our next one, marijuana in Oklahoma, and we'll begin with Brett Bagansky.
Both of you are on record supporting medical marijuana in Oklahoma. However, Mr. Stitt, you did not support State Question 788. Mr. Edmondson, you did. So how pleased with you with the new medical marijuana law, with the progress, I mean, and what more needs to be done with it?
Mr. Edmondson?
Well, the health department took a good start, but they were called up short by passing rules and regulations that a lot of people felt were frustrating the state question that passed with 57% of the vote, and the rules were subsequently withdrawn. The health department has now worked on new rules which would implement medical marijuana. At the same time, they refuse to call it a joint committee. They call it a bicameral committee of the House and Senate are working on potential legislation to also meet those needs. I'm looking forward to the results of the legislation and the final results of the health department rules as governor to make sure that the state question that passed is implemented properly and in a way that safeguards the health and safety of all Oklahomans.
Mr. Stitt, how pleased are you with the progress of the new medical marijuana law, and what do you believe needs to be done?
You know, as I've traveled the state, you know, people are okay with medical marijuana. If it's actually going to help a patient, I think everybody's fine with that. I've went and visited with pain management clinics to ask them if they would prescribe medical marijuana, and they said, yeah, in certain situations it helps people get off opioids. So that's already passed. We're not arguing that fact. It's going to help some people, but now we have to implement it. And so we have the legislature right now is working on that. We've got to think how we keep the safety, keep the public safe. Because we have businesses and we've got trucking companies that are moving products, and how do we keep our industries, how do they test for this, for medical marijuana? How do they have a safe work environment? So there's a lot of consequences, there's a lot of unintended consequences that are going on right now that we have to make sure that our businesses know how to do it, that we keep the public safe as people are using this substance.
Your 30-second rebuttal?
Well, we certainly hope that the health department in their new regulations have met those needs and that the legislature is prepared to step up. In the meantime, we have issues like safety in the workplace. We have issues like how is this going to be regulated in school properties. Those issues have yet to be addressed. I'm looking forward to the early efforts to do that, and if they haven't solved that problem by January, I'll be working on it as governor.
Our next question comes from Abigail Ogle.
On the same topic of marijuana, let's take it a step further. Supporters of this say it would bring in much needed tax revenue to the state. Do you support legalizing recreational marijuana use? Why or why not?
You have 1 minute.
Yeah, the short answer is no. There's too many unintended consequences by legalizing marijuana recreationally. It's still illegal federally, and I would not put our state through that. You can look at the consequences that are happening to Colorado. The homelessness has increased. You've got insurance costs have risen. Business insurance has risen. You know, that's not something we want to put our state through. So medical is fine. That's what passed. But recreational, until it's legal federally, I wouldn't want to put our state through that.
Mr. Edmondson?
Well, I would urge caution on recreational marijuana. We have an opportunity in Oklahoma to watch Colorado, Oregon, Washington, California, and other jurisdictions that have legalized recreational marijuana to just see if the downside outweighs the upside. We know what the upside is. Colorado's getting about $400 million in new revenue as a result of that. But there are problems. It's a cash economy because it is still illegal at the federal level. Banks can't do it. Credit cards can't be used. So it's a cash economy. If the day comes when an initiative petition goes on the ballot or the legislature moves to enact it, we will then have the ability to avoid the mistakes that have been made in other states and make sure we capitalize on the strong suit in states where they've done things properly. And I would urge wait and see and take advantage of that opportunity to study.
Mr. Stitt, you have 30 seconds.
You know, when you think about marijuana use, those are some treatment things that we need to do a better job in our state. The opioid use, the crisis that we have in some of our drug uses, we've got to invest in educational outcomes. We've got to invest and get our private sector and get our churches and getting different nonprofits on this issue. And I'll do that and lead that as governor to help with the overall drug use and problems in our state.
Gentlemen, thank you both for staying on time in our first half hour. We have much more to get to. The gubernatorial debate between Drew Edmondson and Kevin Stitt continues in our next half hour. One of them will lead our state for the next 4 years. Coming up, we're going to talk about our state's economy and those attack ads. We'll be back. Welcome back. Thank you for watching our gubernatorial debate. Kevin Stitt got the first question in this debate, so Drew Edmondson will get the first question in this half hour. Our panelists are standing by right now, and we want to get to the topic of attack ads. You've seen them, so let's address them, and we'll start with Brett Begansky.
Mr. Edmondson, an ad paid for by Stitt for governor states as Attorney General, you steered $30 million to one law firm, and that firm gave you a, quote, cushy job. Now, the ad also says the firm in question is bankrolling your campaign. During your time as Attorney General, did you steer millions of dollars to one law firm, and how much has that law firm donated to your campaign?
That is probably the most untrue ad that I've seen in this whole campaign season. If we go back to the years of the tobacco litigation, I hired two firms from out of state, one from North Carolina and one from Mississippi, who had already engaged in litigation in several other states. They'd already started the discovery process. They're the ones that selected the in-state firms to do the in-state work, depositions, things of that nature. So I did not select the in-state firms that participated. Secondly, when it was over, the attorney fees that went to those firms were decided by an arbitration panel pursuant to the master settlement agreement and came on top of the settlement and not out of the settlement. So I didn't steer any money in terms of attorney fees. It was decided by an arbitration panel. And the third part, and I don't have enough time right now, I will deal with it in the last 30 seconds, is about the cushy job I was supposed to have gotten. And I look forward to talking about that.
We'll give you that 30 seconds coming up. You have 1 minute, Mr. Stitt.
To respond to that?
You can respond to it if you'd like.
You know, everything that we run is factual, and I just find it unbelievable that he says he didn't work for that law firm. They didn't receive the $30 million. It's all factual, and that's why it was ran. And furthermore, you know, this is just what politicians do. When he was down, he started attacking me and my company, and I'm so proud of our employees and what we've done, and he's just trying to mislead Oklahomans on our company, and so we thought it was very appropriate to let everybody know what he did as Attorney General in our state.
You have that 30 seconds.
Thank you. When I left the Attorney General's office in 2011, I went to work for an Oklahoma City law firm called Gable Gottwals, and I worked for them for 4 years. When I left Gable, I went into private practice as Edmondson Law Office, and I rented space at Riggs Avenue and paid them $250 a month. After 2 years of doing that, I became of counsel with Gable Gottwals, and they got 1/3 of what I earned. They paid me nothing. So that's not only a lie, it is a blatant lie, and it's very close to an allegation of illegal activity.
Your time is up. Thank you, sir. And we want to continue on attack ads with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Jessica. Mr. Stitt, several attack ads cite a Business Insider's list that names your mortgage company as one of the shadiest in the country. The list states 98% more defaults, license revoked due to fraud. How do you defend yourself, and why should Oklahomans trust you to run the state and the state's finances?
Again, it's simply not true. Our company, we have really, really low default rates, less than the national average. I'm so proud of our employees. We employ 1,200 people. We do 3,000 home loans every single month. And so it's just typical politicians trying to twist the truth. The fact is, we get audited in 41 states every single year, plus Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, Ginnie Mae. The CFPB is one of our regulators. So this is just typical politicians who've never actually lived in the private sector, signed paychecks, had to deal with regulations, try to twist the truth and mislead Oklahomans. But it doesn't work. They've been trying this all the way in the primary. Oklahomans are too smart for that. I would encourage Mr. Edmondson to come visit with our employees, because they're very, very frustrated that somebody is actually attacking them. I hear it every day, and I'm proud of our employees, and I will stick up for them.
Mr. Edmondson, you have 1 minute.
Well, the Business Insider story is accurate. At the time, Business Insider listed Gateway Mortgage as one of the 15 shadiest, with a default rate not a fraction of the national average, but double the national average. Those are facts, and people were kicked out of their homes after receiving subprime loans and subprime mortgages, and not all the T's were crossed, not all the I's were dotted, and 8 states took regulatory action against Gateway, and 3 of them banned Gateway from doing business. Now, it may have reformed, I don't know. All I know is that was the record back when it happened, and I also know that Gateway is currently in litigation with Lehman Brothers with an October 29th date, with Lehman Brothers suing Gateway as one of the defendants in a $4 billion lawsuit, because Gateway was driven into bankruptcy by the shoddy mortgages. Wow. Not Gateway. Lehman Brothers was forced into bankruptcy in part because of the shoddy mortgages sold to them by Gateway.
Okay, and your time is up, and you have 30 seconds to respond.
For everybody out there watching, Oklahomans, Lehman Brothers, we haven't sold Lehman Brothers a loan since 2004. They sued 6,400 lenders, 6,400. We had 0.01%. It was 5 loans in question. This is just typical politicians trying to twist the truth. Oklahomans are too smart for that. I welcome anybody to come check out our company, come talk to our employees. I'm so proud of them. And for somebody at his authority to attack an Oklahoma company is disgraceful.
Gentlemen, thank you. Now let's switch topics. Top of mind for Oklahomans right now, of course, the economy, and we'll begin this discussion with Scott.
Thanks, Jessica. Gentlemen, based on the results of a 2018 study, Oklahoma earned the distinction as one of the country's 5 most miserable states, meaning citizens themselves report feeling miserable. 16% of Oklahomans living at the poverty level, 20% of Oklahomans saying they struggle to afford food on a daily basis. What's the key to turning around those numbers, many more like them? And what 3 things could you do to make it happen as governor?
Well, the long-term key is economic development and economic growth, and that means encouraging existing businesses to expand and inviting companies to move into the state of Oklahoma. The problem is they aren't going to move in or expand at the level we would like to see unless we start investing in our own people. Until the quality of our education improves, until the teacher shortage is reduced, until class sizes get smaller, until our colleges and universities are properly funded along with career tech, until we improve our health outcomes, until we start providing mental health, drug, and alcohol treatment facilities, until we start bringing down prison population, we're not going to have the kind of economic development we would like to see that is the key to long-term growth, and it's the key to job opportunities for people who are deprived at this time of the opportunity to earn a good living.
Mr. Stitt?
You know, I think we have too good of a state to be in all those categories that you did a good job of explaining there. You know, everything starts with a vision and a goal, and the goal is to be top 10. Top 10 in job creation, top 10 in education, top 10 in infrastructure, healthcare outcomes. And so when you start with that goal in mind, then you can actually get down to the details on how we're going to accomplish it. Folks, this is going to take a lot of innovation. It's going to take new, fresh ideas. It's going to take a lot of energy, working with the legislature, getting them all moving in the right direction. There's no easy answers here. But folks, we don't have any different issues in Oklahoma than they have in any other state. That's why I'm running for governor, because we are at the bottom and we can do so much better. It's going to take new leadership. It's going to take an outsider. It's going to take a business person. We've tried the career politicians, folks, and it's not working. We need a fresh approach and a fresh start.
You have 30 seconds if you'd like.
Well, Governor Fallon went 6 years with the same kind of rhetoric that we're hearing from Kevin Stitt today. Everything will be all right. We just need to keep doing what we're doing. And then we started having billion-dollar holes in the budget. And finally, in her 7th year, Governor Fallon admitted we have a revenue problem. The only difference between Governor Fallon and Kevin Stitt is that he hadn't admitted it yet. We do have a revenue problem in the state of Oklahoma. The legislature took a good first step in April, which he would have vetoed, but there's more to do.
Our next question comes from Monty Brown.
There are roughly 78,000 farm and ranching operations in Oklahoma, and some are concerned about how trade negotiations and tariffs at the federal government level will affect their exports to places like China and our neighbors in Mexico and Canada. What will you do as governor to support Oklahoma's agriculture industry on this issue?
Mr. Stitt?
Yeah, just to answer the last question, don't let anybody tell you that we've got a revenue problem. We have $20 billion in our state budget. We have an extra $1 billion coming in next year. Folks, we've got a very strong structural problem, which I hope we'll get to here in a second. But our agriculture industry is such a huge part of our state. And as governor, we've got to make sure that they have right access to the different markets to ship the goods. We've got a huge asset in the port that we get a lot of. We have a lot of opportunity to ship goods that way. As governor, I've got to make sure that we sell and we have great relationships with Taiwan and some of the Southeast countries that buy a lot of our pork products. So I am all over the agricultural industry and want to make sure that they have everything that they need. I'll work with President Trump and his delegation. I support what he's doing with China to make sure we get fairer deals. He's a business guy. He is knowing how to get it done. And he also just passed a bill that is helping our agriculture community as well.
Okay, sir, your time is up. Mr. Edmondson, you have 1 minute.
Well, in terms of agriculture, I think it's important that the governor work with the Oklahoma congressional delegation, which is where the real work on tariffs is at the federal level. In terms of the economy, boy, I wish that $1 billion was true. Unfortunately, Denise Northrup, head of OMS, the Office of Management Enterprise Services, who is really responsible for preparing the budget, says it just isn't true. It was based on estimates back in August. Our economy was down in September, and the estimates went down, and it includes that estimate by the treasurer was based on a total amount of money coming in, which included sales tax revenue that had to be remitted back to cities. It included all of our income tax without accounting for the refunds. It's a bogus number. It's not going to be there. Denise Northrup says anybody who believes we're going to have a windfall in 2019 is just not being realistic. It's a good hope, but it's not going to happen unless we make it happen through additional revenues.
Your rebuttal?
Again, there he goes again. It's always about new revenue, new taxes. Folks, we have some structural problems. We have a $21 billion budget and nobody's accountable. There's no transparency, there's no audits. As governor, we need a business approach to running state government. I will make sure that those agency heads are accountable to somebody. They're accountable to the governor, because at the end of the day, this is about delivering services to you and Oklahomans and our citizens and getting dollars into our health system, into our roads and bridges. I know how to do it, and I'm going to do it as governor.
Abigail, you have the next question.
You know, earlier this year, the State Department of Health unnecessarily laid off hundreds of workers, leaving the department and thousands of Oklahomans, frankly, in crisis. What specifically will you do as governor to hold our state agencies accountable and make sure they're keeping their finances, their fiscal houses in order?
Mr. Edmondson?
Yeah, well, I think people probably remember when I was Attorney General, we took action against the health department over ghost employees, people that were on the payroll that were not showing up for work, not drawing a salary. We also took investigative and legal action against the state insurance commissioner, a Democrat, who was abusing his office. As governor, I will work directly with the new attorney general and the new state auditor to make sure that state agencies run cleanly, honestly, and as efficiently as humanly possible. I've done it as attorney general, I know how to do it, and I can do it as governor. We will make that happen.
You have 1 minute, Mr. Stitt.
You know, running state government is more like running a business because this is about delivering services, and we saw it. You've got to understand how to read a balance sheet, hire the right people, create the type of accountability that we're all used to living in the private sector. So the Department of Health, they lost $30 million. They laid off 200 Oklahomans right before Christmas. Then they found that $30 million in a slush fund. Folks, that's not going to happen with me as governor because the legislature passed a law. I'll be the first governor that gets to appoint that Department of Health person. But that's only a $400 million agency. What about the Healthcare Authority, which is a $5.5 billion agency? We're the only state, all 49 other states give the governor the authority to deliver those services. You want to know why we're struggling in rural health? It's because of the bloat in that department. I'm going to change that as your next governor. Huge difference between me and my opponent. He doesn't think there's anything wrong with the structure of the state government. I think that's where everything's at.
Your rebuttal?
Well, there he goes again. He's talking about the Healthcare Authority, which is audited every year at the national level and has one of the lowest inefficiency rates in the entire nation. They do an excellent job of delivering services to the people of the state of Oklahoma, and they can handle the increase under the Medicaid expansion. A good first step.
Our next question comes from Scott Thompson.
Gentlemen, we keep going back to it time and time again tonight, but Oklahoma's colleges, the biggest percentage cuts in the nation, are 2 research universities over the last 10 years. Prisons, highways, health services, the state parks, all in financial crisis. The DHS computer system crashed this summer in Tulsa. They're using a 30-year-old model. Nobody could get their driver's license. Is it possible to cut and save our way out of the mess, or do you have to raise taxes for new revenue?
Mr. Stitt?
We absolutely do not have to raise new taxes. Like I said before, they raised $500 million in taxes last year. We've got $500 million more in revenue because the economy is coming back. We've got to expand the tax base. We don't need to raise taxes. We need to get more taxpayers. We are about results, not just new taxes. We've got to grow our economy. And folks, we obviously have to invest what the market is and what the other states around us are spending in education. But to get $300 million, we have it in revenue coming back, but $300 million is only 1.5% efficiencies in a $20 billion budget. Folks, we have some structural problems. I've been looking at what other states do, how they structure, how they have their agency heads reporting to the governor so they're delivering better services. That's what I'm going to do as governor, and it's a big, big difference between me and my opponent here.
Mr. Edmondson?
Well, Mr. Stitt is doing what any good salesman would do. He's trying to tell you what you want to hear and what you want to believe when it just isn't so. We have problems across the board, and this is not the problem of agencies. This is the problem of delivery of services to people, the people of the state of Oklahoma. And Mr. Stitt is following the same rhetoric that we heard from Mary Fallon for years and years and years. If we just cut and cut and cut, we'll be all right. Well, it didn't work. We had 2 years of billion-dollar holes in the budget. We took money from every conceivable agency. $500 million a year from the Department of Transportation would put the 8-year rolling plan for roads and bridges at least 18 months behind schedule. And now Mr. Stitt's saying the same thing. If we just sit still, maybe everything will be all right. I wish it were so. If it were so, I wouldn't be running for governor. But it is so, and we've got work to do in order to make Oklahoma the state that we want to see.
Would you like your 30 seconds?
Sure. You know, what my opponent doesn't understand is it's a zero-sum game. And when you look at what we have to offer in our state, we can never put our our tax structure and our businesses at a competitive disadvantage in the market that they compete in. We can never give an industry a reason to leave our state and move to another state. We have to make sure everything is market, and right now it's market. If we raised it anymore, we'd be way out of market. I'm not going to do that to Oklahomans, because at the end of the day, when we get our economy growing, that's going to help education and healthcare, infrastructure, everything.
Brett with the next question.
Mr. Edmondson, you support raising the gross production tax back to its historic level of 7%. And while many education advocates support that idea, what do you tell Oklahomans who are worried companies and jobs are going to leave our state?
Well, I tell them the same thing George Kaiser says. He made his first $1 billion off Kaiser Francis oil. Oil and gas companies go where the oil and gas are. Now, where are they going to go if they leave Oklahoma? Texas's gross production tax is at 7%, and they charge ad valorem property tax on top, which gives them an effective rate of 13%. We're even at 7% in Oklahoma, will be one of, if not the lowest, gross production taxes and total tax burden on oil and gas in the nation. You know, half the oil companies split off from the Oklahoma Independent Petroleum Association on this issue. Oil and gas companies, including some of the original founders of OIPA, said it's not fair that we're having to pay 7% because we drill vertically and the horizontal drillers are getting away with less than 7%. It was raised to 5%, and the drill rig count is higher than it's ever been. We can raise it to 7%, they can pay their fair share, and we can go forward.
Mr. Stitt, you have 1 minute on the GPT.
Listen, the government can never spend enough money. I haven't heard one thing about results. Folks, you have to have results. We've got to actually talk about being top 10 in pavement conditions, getting dollars into our infrastructure, getting those dollars into our healthcare system. All my opponent and career politicians talk about is raising more taxes without any management and delivering those services. So what he doesn't tell you is we're already at market. We're already at market with the other states. We have a 5% income tax in our state and low property taxes. Texas has 0% income tax and higher property taxes. We have got to sell what we can sell, but we certainly can't put our businesses at a disadvantage. So it's much more complicated. You've got to look at apples to make sure that we're not, and I would never, by the way, pick on one industry. If we need revenue, we're going to look at everything. We're just not going to single out one industry, our number one industry in the country, in our state, by the way.
You have 30 seconds.
Well, number one, we're not raising taxes on oil and gas. We're putting them back where they were. Gross production tax was reduced for oil and gas companies who drilled horizontally as an experiment to see if it worked. Well, it worked. It's now the way they do business. They're extracting billions of dollars from under the soil. It's time to take away that incentive as it's no longer necessary. It's time for them to pay what they used to pay here in the state of Oklahoma and what they continue to pay in every other state where they drill.
We've talked a lot about the economy. Now we want to discuss criminal justice. And Abby, you're up first.
Oklahoma has the highest incarceration rate in the entire country per capita. What, if anything, would you do to change that?
Mr. Stitt?
You know, this is something that's very, very alarming to me. We're number one in something that we should be number 50th at. You know, 49 states are doing that better than us. And we incarcerate people for these minor drug infractions for a lot longer than the other states around us. We've got to catch them earlier in the system, get them help, get them rehab, treat the addiction. The other thing is fines, fees, and court costs. It's totally gotten away from us in our state. So I've met with the district attorneys, and I'm going to be tough on crime, and I support our district attorneys, our first responders, our police officers. As governor, I'll be out in front demanding that we respect them. They have a really tough job. But we've got to look at alternative fundings for the district attorneys, because 50% of their funding comes from fines, fees, and court costs. It's a self-dealing that other states don't have to worry about. And this is, again, a structural problem that we have. Folks, I want you to understand, we don't have any different issues than any other state does. We've got poor leadership. We've got some structural problems. I'm telling you the truth, we have to fix that to move our state forward.
And Mr. Edmondson, what would you do in relation to our highest incarceration rate in the country. What would you do to fix that?
Well, in the first place, I voted for state questions 780 and 781, which made simple possession of drugs, not possession with intent or actual distribution, but simple possession, no longer prison eligible. They can still go to jail, but they're not going to be taking up prison space. I also support the Department of Mental Health Smart on Crime proposal, which would put drug, alcohol, and mental health treatment facilities to try to stop crimes from being committed, to treat the underlying causes of crime before the crimes are committed. Thirdly, I believe that those who are serving time now for offenses that are no longer a felony, those names I want from the Pardon and Parole Board. Send me those names. If the crime they committed is no longer a felony, we need to be getting them out. We need to do a lot of other things by people coming out of prison, things like driver's licenses, making sure they have a place to live, helping them overcome the fines and fees, maybe by forgiving 1/5 of them a year for 5 years if they stay out of trouble.
Would you like a 30-second rebuttal?
Sure. Yeah, my opponent was the Attorney General for 16 years and oversaw all this incarceration, heavy incarceration, expansion into private prisons. I don't know how we can expect any different results if we keep electing the same people. We need a fresh approach, a business approach, an outsider, and to actually move the needle on this. We've been told this stuff our whole lives as Oklahomans. Folks, that's why I'm running for governor. We've got to have an outsider on these problems or nothing's going to change.
Gentlemen, thank you. We have now reached the end of the question and answer round, and now the candidates
Do I get 30 seconds?
each have 2 minutes. You're asking if you get 30 seconds. I believe no, because he just had his 30-second rebuttal. That's right. He had 1 minute, you had 1 minute, and he had his 30-second rebuttal. So let's get to the closing remarks. The candidates have 2 minutes each for their statements. Our general manager joined the two sides for a coin toss before the debate, and that determined the order of the closing statements. Drew Edmondson chose to go second, and we're going to start now with Kevin Stitt. You have 2 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. You know, I want to specifically talk to the undecided voters tonight. If you're tired like I am of coming in last place, or if you're tired of struggling and wondering why are our schools not up to par with the other states, and why our roads and bridges and our healthcare system are not up to par with the other states, that's why I'm running for governor, folks. I think we can do a lot better. I think with new leadership, we can be a top 10 state. And that's why I'm fighting so hard to win this election. And day one in office, I'm going to do a couple things. Number one, I'm going to end the politics as usual and the good old boy system and the system that's always protecting one industry over another industry. I'm going to be focused on what's best for all 4 million Oklahomans. And number two, we're going to take advantage of what's happening nationally in the economy. Our economy is starting to boom. Job and unemployment is extremely low, but our state has not captured that growth like it should. We need a business person, a fresh approach in state government that knows how to talk to CEOs and knows how to recruit businesses. I'm that guy. And then number three, we're going to change the structure of how government is working. Folks, there's 120 different agencies. It's like driving a car with 120 different steering wheels. We've got no direction. We need a leader that tells us exactly how to go and how to deliver better services to our citizens. So I know you're frustrated, and I'm frustrated. But if you'll elect me as your next governor, we will change the structure of the government. We'll get our economy growing again, and we will be a top 10 state. So on November 6th, it's going to be such an important race, and I ask for your support and your vote on November 6th. Thank you, and God bless you.
Mr. Edmondson, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. One of my friends and supporters is former Governor George Nye. He was a school teacher in McAllister as I was a school teacher in Muskogee. He served in the Oklahoma legislature as I served in the Oklahoma legislature. He was elected lieutenant governor and was our longest serving lieutenant governor as I was elected attorney general. Under Mr. Stitt's definition of career politician, George Nye would have been disqualified from running for governor, but he ran anyway and he got elected. And in his re-election, when he became the first governor in Oklahoma's history to be re-elected as governor, he carried all 77 counties. And I think that was the public speaking in very loud tones that a little experience is a good thing, and it can be a good thing for the state of Oklahoma. We did good things in the Attorney General's office. When we sued the tobacco industry, we didn't quit with the judgment. We formed the Oklahoma Tobacco Trust, and to date it has over $1 billion in it. It's spending tens of millions of dollars on cancer research, adult stem cell research, and other health issues, and none of that's tax money. All of that is savings from the payments from the tobacco industry. We created the Education Technology Trust that put smart boards in the hands of over 109,000 Oklahoma students. And that wasn't tax money. That was thinking outside the box and getting things done. That's what you can do if you've got a little experience and know how government works, and didn't discover last year that we've got a prison overcrowding population. I knew that going into this race. I knew we had a problem in education. I knew we had a problem in health care. And I knew those things because I read the paper and I voted and I took part in the politics and government of the state of Oklahoma. I have the on-the-job training necessary to start from day one building the state of Oklahoma as your next governor. I ask for your support, I welcome it, and I thank you.
Gentlemen, I thank you both for your time tonight. Our time is up. One will be our next governor. Thank you for joining tonight on this gubernatorial debate. Remember, you vote November 6th. Have a great evening.